When dealing with difficult people, especially narcissists, it's natural to feel the urge to call them out directly. But what if I told you that calling them out doesn't just backfire, it actually feeds the very behavior you're trying to stop? Instead of falling into their trap, there's a better way, a wiser way, and it's one that aligns with how God calls us to handle toxic situations. This isn't about silence or weakness, it's about strategy, strength, and faith. When you are faced with a narcissist, the instinct inside of you wants to stand up, point a finger, and call them out for exactly who and what they are, because you think that if you can just get the truth out loud, maybe in front of them or even in front of others, then somehow it will change the way they behave or make them finally realize the damage they are causing. But here is where the trap is set, because calling them out directly does not lead to awareness or change. It only fuels their need for control. It only feeds their ego, and it gives them another opportunity to twist the story back on you. The moment you think you've cornered them with truth is the exact moment they find a way to play victim or attack you in return. So instead of falling into that trap, the strength comes from not giving them the stage they crave. When God tells us to walk in wisdom, He's not saying ignore injustice or silence your voice. He's saying choose your battles with discernment. You don't win a fight with someone who thrives on chaos by creating more chaos. You win by refusing to step into their arena at all. The narcissist wants reaction. They want your energy. They want you to prove yourself, because the more you engage, the more they feel in control of you. But when you stand still, when you stay calm, when you keep your composure, you are showing them and yourself that your peace is not up for negotiation. This kind of response is not weakness, it is a higher strength because it requires self-discipline in the very moment you want to unleash every word inside you. Think about how much energy it costs every time you try to explain yourself to someone who has no intention of listening. Think about the exhaustion that comes from arguing with someone who is committed to misunderstanding you. That is what calling out a narcissist really leads to. Endless cycles that wear you down and rob you of your clarity. But when you shift the focus from them to you, when you stop trying to expose them and instead choose to protect your spirit, you will notice something powerful. They lose their grip. They don't know what to do with someone who doesn't rise to their bait, someone who doesn't answer every accusation, someone who refuses to be dragged into their drama. This is why God says, guard your heart, because your heart is the wellspring of life. And when you hand it over to toxic arguments, you are letting them dictate the flow of your energy. Guarding your heart looks like setting boundaries without explaining them, saying less instead of saying more, and allowing silence to do the heavy lifting. It looks like walking away from battles that don't need to be fought, because walking away is not surrendering. It is choosing peace over poison. The narcissist thrives on the idea that you will always be available for another round. But when you no longer give that to them, you're showing that your value is not up for debate. It takes courage to realize that the best defense is not confrontation, but self-control. Many people mistake confrontation for courage, but real courage is not about how loudly you can call someone out. It is about how firmly you can stand without being moved by their games. Real courage is about having the patience to let truth reveal itself instead of trying to force it into the light. The narcissist will eventually show their true colors to everyone because the mask always slips, but you don't have to be the one tearing it off. You can let time, consistency, and God's justice handle that part while you preserve your strength. This doesn't mean you never speak up. It means you choose wisely when and how to speak. It means you learn that every word doesn't deserve a response, every insult doesn't deserve a defense, and every manipulative game doesn't deserve your participation. Sometimes the strongest statement you can make is to say nothing at all, to let your silence communicate that you are unshaken, that you will not be manipulated, and that you refuse to give power to their performance. That silence is not empty. It is full of dignity, and it speaks louder than any attempt to call them out ever could. And when you learn to stand in that space, when you choose peace over the urge to expose, you discover that the real victory is not getting them to change. It is keeping yourself from being changed by them. It is about holding on to who you are in the face of someone who wants to distort it. It is about keeping your faith intact when someone tries to pull you into doubt. It is about protecting your mind, your heart, and your spirit, because those are the things they cannot take unless you hand them over. When God instructs us to respond with wisdom and not reaction, it's because He understands human nature far more deeply than we do, and He knows that reacting out of impulse often causes us to make decisions that only add to the problem instead of solving it. With a narcissist, this becomes even more critical, because every reaction you give is like fuel to their fire. They thrive on drama. They thrive on control. They thrive on pulling you out of character. And when you give them what they're looking for, you step right into the role they designed for you. Responding with wisdom doesn't mean you don't feel the frustration or the anger. It means you take a pause, you breathe, and you decide your actions from a place of strength instead of emotion. That pause is powerful because it keeps you in charge of your choices instead of letting them dictate your moves. Wisdom is about recognizing that not every battle is worth fighting and not every word deserves your answer. Reaction is quick, it's emotional, it's often messy, but wisdom is steady, calm, and deliberate. When you choose wisdom over reaction, you begin to notice how much more peace you carry, even in the middle of conflict. The narcissist may still throw insults, they may still twist the truth, they may still try to provoke you, but when you operate with wisdom, you are no longer giving them the outcome they expect. They expect you to explode, to defend yourself endlessly, to match their chaos with more chaos, but when you don't, it disarms them. That is the kind of strength that can't be faked because it's built from discipline and clarity. One of the most powerful things you can do is refuse to let them script the interaction. A narcissist wants to control not just what you say, but how you feel, how you react, and how much energy you give away. If they can predict that you will always blow up, then they know exactly which buttons to press. But when you stop reacting, when you replace quick words with calm silence or measured responses, the script falls apart. They realize that you are no longer playing by their rules, and that shift takes the power away from them and puts it back in your hands. Wisdom doesn't mean staying silent forever, but it does mean knowing that the timing and tone of your response matters more than the urge to speak immediately. God calls us to be slow to speak and slow to anger, not because He wants us to be passive, but because He wants us to be effective. Think about how many arguments would end differently if instead of reacting instantly, you paused and considered whether your words would bring clarity or just more conflict. Wisdom is like a shield that protects you from getting dragged into unnecessary battles. It's the ability to step back and see the bigger picture, to understand that not every fight is about truth. Some fights are simply about control, and the best way to win is not to participate at all. When you carry wisdom into those moments, you are less likely to be manipulated because you are making choices from clarity instead of pressure. And here's the truth. Wisdom takes practice. It's not something that shows up overnight, especially when you've been conditioned to defend yourself constantly. At first, you might feel the urge to react every single time, and you might even slip up. But each time you choose wisdom instead, you build a muscle that gets stronger. Over time, the narcissist realizes that the old ways of controlling you no longer work. And while they may try harder at first, eventually they will see that their efforts are wasted. This isn't just about protecting yourself from them, it's about building a life where your peace is guarded, your responses are intentional, and your choices reflect the strength God placed inside you. There's also something freeing about choosing wisdom because it shifts the focus away from trying to manage someone else's behavior and back to what you can control, which is you. You cannot force a narcissist to change. You cannot make them see the truth, but you can control how you show up, how you respond, and how much of yourself you are willing to hand over to their games. That kind of control is liberating because it breaks the cycle where they pull you in and you react, and instead creates a new cycle where you remain grounded no matter how hard they push. Wisdom reminds you that their chaos is not your chaos, and their manipulation is not your responsibility. So when God says respond with wisdom, He's giving you a strategy for survival and for strength. He's telling you that your power doesn't come from matching their volume or their games. It comes from standing firm in clarity, in composure, and in peace. That wisdom not only protects you, it speaks louder than any reaction ever could, because while they are busy trying to get a rise out of you, you are busy protecting the most valuable thing you have, your heart, your mind, and your peace. Silence and boundaries often feel like the opposite of strength because we're taught that if we don't stand up loudly and defend ourselves, then somehow we're being weak or letting the other person win. But with a narcissist, the truth is completely different because silence and boundaries are actually the most powerful tools you have. A narcissist feeds off of reaction, they feed off of arguments, they feed off of pulling you into an endless back and forth, and when you refuse to give them that, you take away their control. Silence doesn't mean you're ignoring the situation or pretending it doesn't exist. Silence means you're choosing not to waste your words on ears that will never listen. It's about understanding that your peace is too valuable to hand over in exchange for temporary relief that only leads to more conflict later. Boundaries work hand in hand with silence because silence without boundaries can just feel like avoidance. But boundaries make it clear that you're not only choosing when to speak, you're also choosing what access they get to you in the first place. Boundaries are not for controlling the other person, they are for protecting you. A narcissist hates boundaries because boundaries are limits, and limits take away their ability to manipulate freely. But when you hold your ground and refuse to let guilt or pressure knock those walls down, you show them that your self-worth is not up for negotiation. Boundaries are not selfish, they are essential. And when God tells us to guard our hearts, that's exactly what boundaries are doing, building a guard around your peace, your spirit, and your time. Silence and boundaries also teach you discipline, because it is not easy to hold back words when everything in you wants to let them fly. It is not easy to step away when you want to stay and prove your point. But every time you choose silence instead of reaction, every time you hold a boundary instead of bending, you are proving to yourself that your self-control is stronger than their manipulation. That's a kind of confidence that grows over time, and the more you exercise it, the less power they have over you. The narcissist doesn't know what to do with silence because silence doesn't give them material to twist, and they don't know what to do with boundaries because boundaries mean they no longer set the terms of the relationship. What you'll notice is that silence can be louder than any argument because silence sends a message they can't spin. Silence communicates that you are not shaken, you are not desperate, and you are not controlled by their chaos. Silence isn't passive, it's active because it's a choice you are making to keep your energy, your dignity, and your clarity intact. When you stay silent, you're refusing to be dragged into the mud, you're refusing to meet them on their level, and you're refusing to play a game you can never win. The strength in silence is that it cannot be used against you because words can be twisted, but silence cannot be misquoted. And boundaries are the same. They send a message without you having to justify, defend, or explain. The narcissist may push, they may guilt trip, they may accuse you of being cold or selfish, but none of that changes the truth that boundaries are healthy and necessary. Boundaries don't have to be loud to be firm, and they don't have to be dramatic to be effective. Sometimes a simple no, sometimes walking away, sometimes choosing not to engage is all it takes to establish a boundary that shows them you are not a participant in their game anymore. And each time you enforce it, you are reclaiming more of your power and more of your peace. It's important to remember that silence and boundaries are not about punishing them. They are about protecting you. They are not a weapon to get back at someone. They are a shield to keep yourself safe. When you use them with that understanding, you stop waiting for the narcissist to change and start focusing on keeping yourself whole. God never called you to let someone drain your energy day after day. He called you to live with wisdom, with peace, and with strength. And that means knowing how to say no, how to walk away, and how to keep your spirit from being entangled in unnecessary battles. When you practice silence and boundaries, you are stepping into a different kind of power, one that doesn't shout or fight, but stands steady and unshaken. It is a power that cannot be taken from you because it doesn't depend on them listening or changing. It depends only on you choosing to value yourself enough to protect what matters. That is why silence and boundaries are not weakness. They are strength in its purest form, strength that refuses to be manipulated, strength that doesn't need to argue to prove itself, and strength that shows you don't need to call out a narcissist when you can rise above them instead. Walking away is one of the hardest things to do when you feel like someone has wronged you, because everything in you wants to stay and fight until you're understood, until they finally admit what they've done, until justice feels like it's been served. But with a narcissist, walking away is not weakness, it's wisdom, because staying only gives them more opportunities to twist the story, to manipulate the conversation, and to drag you deeper into their cycle. Walking away is not giving up. It's choosing not to waste your energy where it will never be honored. It's recognizing that your peace is too valuable to trade for an argument that only leaves you more drained than before. When you walk away, you're not saying they were right. You're saying the battle isn't worth your spirit. You're refusing to hand them the satisfaction of seeing you lose control because that's exactly what they want. The more you argue, the more you react, the more they feel like they've won. But when you turn and leave, the control they thought they had slips right through their fingers. It takes more strength to walk away than it does to stand there and fight, because walking away requires you to put your pride aside and choose peace over proving a point. That kind of discipline is what God calls us to, not because He wants us to be silent doormats, but because He wants us to stand in strength that doesn't crumble under pressure. The truth is, walking away doesn't mean the issue disappears. It means you are protecting yourself from being consumed by it. You are drawing a line that says, this is where I stop engaging. This is where I protect my mind. And this is where I refuse to let someone else dictate my emotions. The narcissist may accuse you of running, of being afraid, of being weak, but deep down, they know they've lost the one thing they crave the most, your attention. Walking away denies them the control they built their power on, and it leaves them to wrestle with their own emptiness. You don't have to announce your exit with anger or explanation. Sometimes the most powerful move is leaving quietly and firmly, without turning back. Think about how much energy you've spent in the past trying to win arguments with people who never planned to hear you. Think about how much of yourself you've poured into trying to prove something to someone who is committed to misunderstanding you. That energy is priceless, and once it's gone, you don't get it back. Walking away is how you reclaim it. It's how you take back the hours, the emotions, and the strength that would otherwise be wasted on someone who is not capable of receiving it. When you walk away, you're not just leaving the narcissist behind in that moment. You're reclaiming your time, your sanity, and your future. God never asked you to fight every battle. He asked you to fight the right ones. And sometimes the right fight is no fight at all. Walking away is not about losing. It's about refusing to engage in a fight that was designed for you to lose from the start. You cannot argue with someone who thrives on arguments. You cannot reason with someone who has no interest in truth. And you cannot expect peace from someone who is addicted to chaos. So, the wisest move, the strongest move, the God led move is to walk away with your head held high, knowing you've chosen to guard your spirit rather than hand it over to their control. The beautiful part of walking away is the freedom it brings. The moment you step out of the argument, you step back into clarity. You remember who you are without their accusations hanging over your head. You find peace in the silence that follows, even if it feels strange at first, because that silence is not empty, it's full of space for healing and growth. Walking away allows you to see that their chaos is not your chaos, their lies are not your truth, and their control is not your destiny. It's in that distance that you find perspective, and perspective is what keeps you from getting pulled back into the same cycle again. And once you experience the strength of walking away, you begin to see it not as a last resort, but as a first choice. You realize that you don't have to meet every insult with an answer. You don't have to meet every manipulation with a defense, and you don't have to meet every provocation with a fight. Walking away becomes a statement of self-worth, a statement of faith, and a statement of strength, because it shows that you value your peace more than their approval, your clarity more than their control, and your spirit more than their games. True strength is not always found in the moments when you raise your voice or when you finally say everything you've been holding back. True strength is revealed in the discipline it takes to hold back what you want to unleash. With a narcissist, this becomes even more critical, because every word you throw at them becomes another tool they use against you. The discipline to pause, to stay calm, and to not give in to the immediate urge to defend yourself shows a level of power they cannot touch. Patience becomes your weapon, and restraint becomes your shield, because in those moments you are no longer reacting to them, you are leading yourself. That leadership over your own emotions is what keeps you from being dragged into a battle that was designed to drain you